It began with 2 hands, a toy drum set, and a dream. I would hit them completely out of time and yet still found them to be the greatest and beautiful sound I've ever heard. I knew I was going to be a drummer. Growing up in a family of musicians and singers, the talent had been within me all along. Every year that went by, I practiced and I got better and better, perfecting the art of hitting things with sticks and rhythm. At the age of 6, I met a man named Donnie, who was a friend of my dad's. And Donnie was a really good drummer. And I really looked up to him of what the art looked like. I wanted to be exactly like him in my craft. So in elementary school, I learned how to play the snare drum. In middle school, I started to branch out into other forms of percussion. Started to play xylophones and tambourines and cowbells and triangles and a myriad of other instruments. And in high school, I learned to put everything, my heart and soul, into every note that I played by just beating the crap out of it. But during this time, I started to become so good that Donnie was running out of things to show me. The student was starting to surpass the master. But during this time, I started to find a new person to look up to, and her name was Margaret. Margaret was the best drummer in high school, and she had shown me drumming to the likes that I had never seen before, and I knew that I was never going to get to her level. But not only did she become my inspiration, but she also became my best friend. So now my drumming has not only led me to the Shippensburg University Marching Band, but has also led me to play for you guys every Sunday morning. We all have stories like that, don't we? The stories of practice, the stories of accomplishing, stories of the arts that we perfect. And your story may not be very similar to mine. Your story may be of learning how to drive. Maybe the story of how you learned to speak to that girl or boy that you never had the courage to before. Or maybe the story of reading the baby books to learn how to raise a child. As our scripture passage says, we were all given gifts by God. We all have talents and gifts that we use every single day, whether it be in our jobs, in our spare time, or you may actually be using gifts that you never even knew that you had. A college professor told me, Professor Parker, she told me that one of the greatest talents is the ability to listen and comprehend what other people are telling us. And hopefully right now you all are exercising that gift. The scripture not only says that you have gifts given by God, but that you must also use these gifts for the furtherment of God's kingdom. Our mission is to make new disciples of Jesus Christ, and we do that through our vision of inviting our neighbors to encounter God, grow in faith, and serve in Christ's love. And using our gifts, we can accomplish that mission and vision. Now, you may be asking yourself, Keric, how do I do that? Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm always going to use Pastor Mick's line because I love Pastor Mick. I have 2 ways in which you can use your gifts for the betterment of God's kingdom every day. I call these 2 ways direct use of gifts and indirect use of gifts. The first, direct use of gifts, is by using your gifts directly for God. How? Well, one way is by participating in the church. We have quite a few people who lend their gifts and talents to the church already. For those that have the ability to speak in front of others, we have our worship assistants. For those that have the ability to play music, we have our praise band. For those that have the ability to teach, we have our Sunday school leaders. And I can go on and on with the variety of gifts and talents that we use here in our church. But some of you might be saying that I don't have gifts that would work well for the church. Well, I'll tell you that you actually might. One example, Red Reeves. Yeah, I'm bringing you up, Red. Red, years ago, for the youth group, used his gifts and talents of woodworking in order to craft pieces that we would build in the youth group to make birdhouses and then later sell to the community. He was using his gifts directly for the betterment of God. And as I said before, we may have talents that you don't even know about. You never know until you try. So I encourage you that if you have the slightest inclination of helping out in the church in some area, I encourage you to do it. You never know until you try. You may find something that you never knew that you had. By using our gifts in the church, when people come to our church, they'll see how active we are as a church, that we are using our gifts in all facets of this church for the betterment of God. This will accomplish our mission and vision in people's lives. But not only by using our gifts inside the church, but also outside of these walls. That's how we can accomplish it. And a good example of this happened a few years ago. Now, Matt Sissel, if any of you, most of you remember Matt Sissel, was a guy from the community who came to one of our yard sales. And I remember distinctly standing at my table and watching Matt talk with my mom for a long time. And with her gift of being very personable with people and with compassion, she struck up a conversation with Matt and told him to come to church that Sunday morning. And I guarantee a lot of other people at a lot of different tables did the same thing. I just remember Mom doing it. But sure enough, that Sunday, he came and sat down right in our church and came for many months after. My mom and the people that convinced him to come to church had accomplished our mission and vision. You can also do that same work with the outreach team that is trying to come up with new ideas and new ways to get our message out into the community. So that's one of the ways of using your gifts for God. The second way is indirectly, which is just using your talents in your daily lives. And you may be saying, Keric, I already do this. Well, yes, you do. You use it every day that you go out into the world. But the simple act is giving thanks to God. One of my favorite men, Stanley, once said, if you're going to be a writer, then write. If you're going to make movies, make movies. By using your gifts is the best way of giving thanks to God. Don't let them go unused. If you're good at working with finances, and you love working with finances, then do finances. If you love working with families and are really good with working with families, then work with families. If you're a student, well, you may not love being a student, but you can still be a student. As you do what you do it all for God, just like in Colossians 3:17. And even through the use of your gifts, you may still lead people to God. I want you to take a journey with me real quick. Say you're a writer like I want to be. And you write a book. It doesn't matter what book it is. It doesn't even have to be centered around God. It's just a book. And someone reads it and loves this book so much, they want to find other people who love this book. And so this guy finds a friend who loves this book to the point where they start talking about things outside the book and start to become really good friends. And the friend says to the other, hey, why don't you come to church with me? And so he does. By writing the book that sparked a conversation that led to a friendship, that led to coming to church, you indirectly affected that person's life and solved the mission and vision of our church. And that's the second way of using our gifts for God. Now, what I'm saying might be a bit redundant because we've heard this a million times, a million different ways, but I think it is a message that deserves repeating. It's a message that speaks to each and every single one of us. No one is exempt from this. As Christians, we are to go out and do what we do best because what we do best was given to us by God. And so please, don't let your gift stay wrapped up in a bow. Let it out and show the world, and most importantly, show God what you can do. Amen? Man, this was a short sermon. It was a lot shorter than I thought